Carry zone, Mark's not here. Yep.
So the only other wrinkle here that we talked about
Is the percentage, right?
yes, so it's 2/3 of those present and voting. So we have to go to 5, would we?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to our special council session of Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. Can't believe August is slipping by on us. Welcome everyone here, our council and our staff, and obviously some visitors in the gallery that some will be introduced later on. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We acknowledge that we're Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First item for us is approval of the agenda. So 2.1, approval of the agenda. I'd ask if councilors would have a copy of the agenda and ask for motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Porter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. So we have several public hearings. We'll get right into those. So the first one is 2.2.1. It's a public hearing. It's a bylaw to amend MPS 24-08 and bylaw to amend Land Use Bylaw 24-09 and to redesignate and rezone a portion of PID 250-44124 West Amherst. Mr. Boone will speak to this. Just before he does, I just want to advise that a public hearing is being held in accordance with the provision of the Municipal Government Act, and that is the purpose of that public hearing is to provide the public with the opportunity to express their views on certain proposals prior to council making a decision on that item. So I'll now call the public hearing to order, and I'll call upon Mr. Boone to introduce the subject and discussion. Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Your Worship. You've set up the public hearing nicely. So there's two components to this as per the title, so we'll jump to the next slide. So it's a little bit of a complicated approach, but in the end, the results will get us to where we need to be. So the land in question that we're making the change to, the redesignation and the rezoning, fronts on the Fenton Road, but the parcel itself is quite a large parcel, and it has frontage both on the Fenton Road as well as on the Southampton Road, all in West Amherst. A lot of folks would have known this site when Von Melançon's Trucking was there. Mr. Melançon still lives adjacent, and the business itself is not operating out of that location, although some of the buildings are still in place. So the challenge here is they would like to create a lot for residential development on the Fenton Road. And the Fenton Road does have some residential properties that both front on the corner of the Fenton Road. You can see in the center air photo. The area in green is the area we'd like to designate from the current commercial designation, although it is zoned urban industrial. So the changes required in order to bring it to commercial recreation will then allow us to designate it resource, which allows us to create the commercial recreation designation, which will permit the proposed use, which is simply a single unit dwelling. So a lot of complications, a lot of patience by the owner and the applicants to go through this process to achieve the opportunity to create a residential building lot, essentially. So two things will change. The first thing we will change is the designation in the area, which is commercial designation. We have to change it to a resource designation, which will allow us to put the commercial recreation zoning on the property. So I know that's a mouthful, but that's the approach. So two things you see on the left, you'll see of your screen, you'll see the industrial zone. The green is the area in which we would make the designation and zoning changes both. And then in the one in the middle, as I mentioned before, the air photo kind of gives you a zoomed in kind of view of the area that we would make the change. So we've made the area a little bigger than the one residential lot because the uses themselves, industrial is not very useful to the applicant. So we made the area that will have the new zoning and the designation a little larger than the single lot, should the applicant come back with a desire to do another lot in the future. It's just kind of future planning, if you will. The third drawing you see on your screen is the current, it's a zoom in of the current designation. So the area is designated commercial, even though it was zoned industrial. That's probably really an error in our overall plan, but we will fix that as part of housekeeping amendments. Next slide, please, Amanda. So you have the package as well with these drawings that you can flip between as well. So this particular location, it's the access road also to some of the farm fields in the area. It's the access road to the wind farm. But it's also has other residential uses that are fronting on the Fenton Road. So we think it's in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Certainly in respect to policy, Kira's done the report that you have in front of you. If you can go back just one, Amanda, sorry. So well-maintained area as far as the gravel road goes, very open, very much a country road. The idea of putting the commercial recreation zone on this land is it does permit single unit dwellings, but it also permits them the ability to have other uses, because as we know, they operate the horse boarding, and the facility is commercial recreation. So trying to set it up for the future, I guess, if you will. So these photos are really just giving you a flavor of the neighborhood. It really fits into what they're looking to accomplish. Next one, please, Amanda. So financial implications, as per your reports, none specific to the proposal. Development's all done by the owner of the lands. Environmental implications, none specific to the matter, although they have gone through the process of test pitting it to make sure they get the appropriate size before subdividing for the on-site sewage disposal system. Community engagement, following the engagement, this is what we've kind of gone through as per the 204 of the Municipal Government Act. So we've been working with the applicant. We had a notice for an open house. The reason we had the open house is we were changing the municipal planning strategy, which is a policy change, and our public engagement policies that we currently have require us to do an open house. That open house was advertised. It was on our website. We published it in the Casket, the local paper, and we had the open house on July 18th. There was no comments received, and no input, and no one attended on this specific issue. The first reading was then in front of council on the 24th, which you remember from your package, and then notice of the public hearing that we're at today was duly advertised on our website as per the new Municipal Government Act criteria. We still provided an ad in the paper, and the public hearing is where we are today. So no motions to consider at this time. The applicants and the owner is here. Should there be any questions, I advise them they didn't have to present, but they were here in case there would be any questions or comments. And at this point, Your Worship, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. So have we received any, or have you received any written submissions from anyone?
No, nothing written. As I mentioned, nothing at the open house. Kira and I confirmed, and I also confirmed with our deputy clerk that there was no written submissions by email or post received. So no concerns have been raised.
Thank you. And is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, I'll just ask again, Mr. Boone, any additional comments or from the applicant themselves?
I don't think they were feeling the need. They've been very cooperative and very patient. I think it's a straightforward change, Your Worship. It's a bit unfortunate. The zone was a little complicated, but I think we'll get there. We are trying to bring this through the process in a reasonable time frame, just because of some of the issues that were in place with the current plan. So I appreciate their cooperation, but also council's cooperation in going through the process.
Thank you. And finally, any questions from any councillors for Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item at the public hearing? Deputy Mayor Gilroy.
When you talk about changing some of this other stuff at the future point, so will we clean up like that C highway and those C mixes at the same time? Will those all get done when you do the rollover late at some point, or?
Your Worship, back to the Deputy Mayor, the plan would be to look at these as part of the plan review, because if we start spot making changes or what we call housekeeping amendments, we would have a long list. So we're looking at doing as part of the plan review. So that would be put the applicant's land in position that where they could do what they currently do with it and what their future plans might be. But if there was a need to do a spot zoning to change things, if they had immediate plans, we would of course do that through this process.
Yeah. Okay, because I'm just looking at some of those C mixes on the corner there. There's currently residential houses on them and whatever.
Yep.
It seems like to be an oddball call for a residential property, so.
It is, but the C-mix zone does prevent the residential, so they are conforming to the zone, but I do agree, Your Worship, back to the Deputy Mayor, that it's probably something we should look at a little bit more
Well,
detail.
the other thing too is if we change it, it will slow down the people having to come before us for changes all the time too.
Correct.
In the overall picture, when you look
Yeah.
at that at
Yeah.
some future point, right?
Yeah, I don't think the applicant has a major subdivision plan just yet.
I don't think so, no.
But if they do, we'll work with them when the time comes.
Exactly, no, but,
Yeah.
yeah, just,
Yeah.
I know that you're planning on reviewing the zoning all over the county in the next number of months or whatever.
Correct.
It's on your radar, so.
Yeah.
To clean some of this up, and
Yeah.
Certainly, even the property across the other side of Fenton Road, opposite them, the back half of that property would be suitable to do the same thing they're doing, really, more so than anything, so.
Correct. That would be my opinion, and the opinion of
Put more
staff.
people through the same process.
Yeah.
If we can stop that, that'd be great, so.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's why we went a little larger, to give them some options.
Perfect.
In respect to looking at the whole plan as in general and going through that open process, the CIO and I had that conversation as recent as yesterday, getting that moving, so I'll take the lumps for that one, but we certainly are in a good position where we should have that out very quickly, and I appreciate council's patience with that process.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any
Worship.
other questions or comments from any councilors from Mr. Boone? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now close the public hearing. We move on to 2.2.2, public hearing bylaw to amend the municipal planning strategy 24-10 to designate commercial development districts. So again, I was going to advise the public hearing is being held in accordance with provisions of the Municipal Government Act, and the purpose of the public hearing is to provide the public with the opportunity to express their views prior to council making any decision in regards to the subject before it. So I'll now call this public hearing to order. Mr. Boone, please.
Thank you, Worship. This item has been in front of council during the first reading process, so as we're doing with all our planning documents now, we're creating a bylaw to move forward. Commercial development districts has been talked about with with this council going back a couple of years. Next slide, Amanda, please. So what we're trying to do here now is we did a bit of a reset. I understand and respect it was in front of council before. We're just doing a bit of a reset because what we're bringing forward in this policy is creating these commercial development districts, but for the county as a whole, as opposed to in the past, it was looked at being focused just on the central serviced areas. So this policy that's in the package, as I presented briefly at the first reading, is to establish the policy, one, but also to create a schedule that shows where these commercial development districts would be. In your package, we'll go to the next slide, Amanda, I think it'll show it a little better. I wasn't going to read the whole policy to you, I don't want to put you to sleep, but the ultimate creation of the commercial tax districts, this schedule will become part of the municipal planning strategy, which would then allow us to move forward to creating a bylaw, which will have the specifics in it. So what you have before you is to change the policy, create the MPS policy, and create the schedule, which would have all of the commercial tax, or sorry, the development districts within it. So that schedule, as you can see, with the exceptions of the town of Oxford, town of Amherst, and I've lost the name now, the First Nation Community Reserve, Franklin Manor, sorry, is the other gray spot. The CO had asked about that last time, and we have confirmed that that's the Franklin Manor. So that's lands that are controlled and part of a First Nation community. So this is kind of how we're going forward. There will still be a bylaw, because where this is a planning strategy change, this will have to go to municipal affairs for approval where we're changing policy. So at some point, we'll bring a more detailed bylaw forward. Next slide, please. So no financial implications other than if this goes into place, it's going to help support and ease economic burdens for business owners. So this change of policy will allow new commercial development to be considered under the phase-in, but it would also allow the expansion of existing commercial businesses to take advantage of the tax phase-in. That would be in the bylaw. Difference being is that new, you would look at the whole project as part of the phase-in, whereas an expansion, you look at the value that's changing on the expanded or the new development. So I just want to make sure that's clear for folks. The word serviced, it has to be serviced. So I will give you an example. If you had I'll say a commercial farming building that was looking at being built and it has no services to it, so no water, no sewer, no washrooms for employees, it wouldn't necessarily be subject to this. But anything that would have water through a well, septic, or would be, say, in Spring Hill in the business park that would have sewer and water provided by the municipal services, those would qualify. Community engagement follows a similar process to the last one that we talked about, Your Worship. which is the open house. Because it was a policy change, we had the open house advertised accordingly. The open house was held. There was no specific attendance. We did have one letter from Lee Weir with Crossroads Cycles supporting this type of business adventure or this movement towards this bylaw. So that would have been part of the original package that you saw on the first reading. So we still consider that as part of this public process and public engagement that was received. First reading was held right after, similar to the last project, on the 24th. Notice of this public hearing was duly advertised per the Municipal Government Act, and we are currently in progress with the hearing today. Again, no motions to consider as we're just at the public hearing stage. So this would still go back to council after this process for consideration at second reading. So, Your Worship, unless there's specific questions, I think that's a bit of an overview.
Thank you, sir. So have we received any written submissions?
Other than the one I mentioned, so Your Worship, I got ahead of myself, the one that we received from Crossroads Cycles. We did have a conversation with an applicant that is one of our rezoning applications. That's Mr. Barkhouse with Fox Point Inn. He verbally expressed to us, this would be helpful to his venture that is going to be part of our second reading package later. So not written, but verbalized to us that he saw this to be advantageous to what he wants to do.
Great, thank you. And is there anyone from the public here that wishes to speak to this agenda item in the public hearing? Seeing none, and were there any additional comments, Mr. Boone, from the applicant themselves, which is us?
This is us, so unless
So this
council
is
has
your
specific
chance.
questions, yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of council, but
Well,
we still have to work, we have a bylaw that's been in place, council's seen it before as part of the package.
Yeah.
We will have to detail that, but the municipal planning strategy will take a little time to catch up, but as far as that process with municipal affairs, but we will be back with the detailed bylaw as part of this as well.
Thank you. And finally, any questions or comments from any councillors from Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item at the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll now close the public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Brings us to 2.2.3, next public hearing, which is Sunset Community Inc. land transfer. Public hearing on this is a little different, so I want to call this hearing to order, and I'll call upon Mr. Harrod to provide background information and identification of the issues.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I begin with just a brief presentation on the item, just to introduce both Gavin McDonald and Nick Poirier from Cox and Palmer, who have supported us through the transaction and are certainly here and available to answer any questions that folks might have during hearing. So, thanks to them for the work. Oh, sorry, and Julie Hoig and Dave McNairn as well at the back of the room from Sunset Community Inc. So, welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Please.
So, next slide, please. So we've been working on this issue for a bit. Involves municipal land, so it hasn't necessarily been public from our point of view. We've dealt with it under Section 22 of the Municipal Government Act, which permits these discussions to have happened in private meetings, and that's the way we've conducted business so far. However, we're moving on to the actual divestiture, or the proposed divestiture of the Sunset lands. In terms of the current situation, Sunset Community Inc. Is quote-unquote owned, and the assets of it are quote-unquote owned by the Municipality of the County of Cumberland, referred to in the slide as MCC. And as everyone knows, I think, or most know, Sunset is governed by an independent board of directors. The organization is funded and regulated by the Nova Scotia Department of Community Services, and the municipality has title to most lands and buildings that are regarded as those assets of Sunset. Along with that, though, is about $8.5 million worth of debenture debt that the municipality has subscribed through the Municipal Finance Corporation, or what used to be the Municipal Finance Corporation, for past modernizations and improvement of the facility. The Department of Community Services pays that debt service through Sunset and remits it to the municipality, and we make the debt payments. Through this process and through these discussions, and as part of this arrangement and these agreements, the Department of Community Services has provided a commitment letter indicating they will continue to pay that debt. In 2027, when the debentures can be retired, and not before because they're legal instruments, the debentures and the debt will be refinanced, and the municipality of the County of Cumberland will no longer be a party to that agreement. Those are sort of the salient facts of the situation as it stands right now, or as it has stood. Move to the next slide, please. And so, the great question, or a good question, is why do this and why now? Well, this initiative is in response to a request from Sunset Community Inc. And as the organization deals with the fallout from the court case, the discrimination of disabled persons, and the remedy report that followed that, amongst the recommendations, the remedy report are closure of adult residential facilities like Sunset, and that work is ongoing and is being implemented by the provincial government. With the county divesting of Sunset and allowing Sunset and the organization to have its autonomy and to invest as it sees fit in opportunities as they arise, the ability to make those decisions in a nimble way and independently without having to have it approved at a political level or approved by Cumberland County provides a much clearer path to these developments. And clearly, it's in the best interests of the clients, of the community, and of the corporation. That is the why. Next slide. So, what are we doing? The municipality of the County of Cumberland has title to 3 PIDs, and I'll show the maps here in a second. This agreement seeks to transfer title to all lands and buildings, these PIDs. Sunset will assume all liabilities that are associated with those properties and with the operation. As I mentioned earlier, the Department of Community Services has committed in writing to continue to pay the debenture debt until 2027, when it can be refinanced, and then we will have no role. As part of this, sort of 2 steps, as part of this transaction, Council will also consider a bylaw to repeal the Sunset as Adult Residential Center bylaw. That bylaw essentially is the governing document, at least in terms of the oversight of Sunset by the municipality and the appointment of members to the board. At the end, the county will no longer have a governance role. The final sort of housekeeping thing is that it's come to our attention that there are actually 2 corporations which are named Sunset Community Inc. One incorporated under the Municipal Housing Corporations Act, and the other under the Registry Joint Stock of the Nova Scotia Business Corporations Act, and we'll be winding up the Housing Corp as a part of the housekeeping. Amanda, can you go to the slides that have the maps, please? Just describe the lands that are being transferred. First of all, this parcel is the one that most folks would think of as quote-unquote Sunset. The address is at Sunset Court, and most of the facility is there on that property. Just across the black line on the left and close to the water. Next slide, please. Nope, next one. I'll go back to that one. This one. This has been separated out just for purposes of land title and for convenience. So there's that PID, and as well now back to the other one, please, Amanda. And this is what most folks would recognize as being Sunset Industries, just off Route 6 on the Crowley Road. Those are the 3 PIDs that are the subject of the transfer agreement. If you could go back to the slides for me, please. Can you go back one more? Nope, the other way. Okay, now go forward for me. Yep. Keep going. There we go. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. So how will this be accomplished today? August 21st is a public hearing. The hearing has been advertised in accordance with Section 51 of the Municipal Government Act. Subsequent to this hearing, the first item on council's agenda is the consideration of that transfer agreement. And again, subject to or in accordance with Section 51 of the Municipal Government Act, it requires a 2/3 majority of those who are present and voting. After council considers that transfer agreement, if council is in agreement, we'll just take a short break and we'll sign those documents. Everyone is here from Sunset and from the county and our team of top-notch legal representatives. So we'll get all of that signed. And council will also consider a resolution for the bylaw to repeal the Sunset as Adult Residential Center bylaw. Essentially, first reading is notice of intent to adopt, and at the September regular meeting, council will consider second and final reading of the bylaw to repeal. And with that housekeeping item of wrapping up Housing Co., as we call it, the transaction will be complete. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, and hand it back to you.
Thank you. So are there any representatives from Sunset or members of the public that wish to make any comments at this time? Certainly welcome to. You don't have to, but welcome to. After 2 years, Julie, I'm sure there's lots that have been said. So seeing none, Mr. Harrod, any further comments from the municipality's perspective?
Your Worship, other than this is very much, in our opinion, in my opinion, a win-win-win for the community, for the corporation, for its clients, and for the municipality. And so it's a very, very positive development, a very positive environment and agreement, and we're just happy to get this done for Sunset, and so everybody can move on. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, any questions from any councilors for Mr. Harrod in regards to this agenda item at the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll now declare this, I'll close this public hearing, and we'll move on to major organizational items. 4.1 Sunset Community Inc. land transfer. Mr. Harrod, I'll just remind folks that when we do get to this, the voting on this, we do require 2/3 of those present to vote. So just want to remind that, and I'll probably ask for a show of hands versus the yea or nay that we normally do, just so we're clear on this. Thank you. Mr. Harrod.
So, Your Worship, this item is just the subject of our public hearing that we just concluded, and so in the interest of not boring everyone to tears, I'm not going to repeat all of that, other than to say the motion, council's actual motion to give effect to the transfer agreement is included in the package. And the motion is that council approve the transfer agreement giving effect to the transfer of municipal lands to the Sunset Community Incorporated in return for Sunset's assumption of all liabilities, including debentures to the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation in the amount of $8.5 million, and that the mayor and CAO be authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the municipality. Your Worship.
Thank you. So you've heard the recommended motion. If someone would like to make that motion, please. Moved by Councillor O'Telling, seconded by Councillor Redmond. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Councillor O'Telling.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to also share in the meeting that the County of Cumberland has supported Sunset in other ways with our housing development with a up to $300,000 amount to help finance the on-site septic, and Sunset definitely appreciates all of the relationships that the county and Sunset have had together over 130 years. So it's quite a big thing that's happening today to change history. When I was elected, I offered to be on the Sunset board as part of being a councillor, and I intend to stay on the Sunset board as long as they'll have me, or until I get kicked off. So I just wanted everyone to know that I care very much about this organization, and I do think this is the best thing going forward with all that is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Telling, for your comments. I think we'd all agree that you've been a tremendous supporter of Sunset and this council, so thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, I want to call for the question. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll do 5.1, then we'll take that quick break so we can do the, organizational policy items, 5.1, first reading, bylaw to repeal the Sunset Residential Center bylaw 2411. Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I referred to in the public hearing, the second step in this series of transactions is the repeal of the bylaw, which is the Sunset Adult Residential Center bylaw. And in short, the bylaw determines the makeup of the board and how council appoints members to the board. This bylaw that council is considering, though, is a one-liner, and it's simply that council approved first reading of the bylaw to repeal the Sunset Adult Residential Center bylaw, and that bylaw simply says the Sunset Adult, I have trouble saying that, Sunset Adult Residential Center bylaw 8709 is hereby repealed. Again, this will require first reading today and second reading at council's next meeting in September. Your Worship.
Thank you. So, Mr. Harris read the recommended motion. Someone like make that motion, please. Moved by Councilor O'Telling, seconded by Councilor Redmond. Questions or comments for Mr. Harris in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll take a quick 5 or 10 minute break just to sign the documents and carry on with our agenda. Thank you.
We'll do it at that table down there. Maybe just send her, can you send her a message in Zoom or something?
Send her a text. Oh, she's there, yeah. Thank you, folks. We'll reconvene the meeting. 5.2, second reading of the bylaw to amend municipal planning strategy 24-03. Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Richard. Your Worship, this is second reading, bylaw to amend municipal planning strategy, and we're creating new policy. So that's why we're making a change to the municipal planning strategy. 6.24 will be the policy number, and it's on our public participation policy. Next slide, Amanda, please. So there's been a number of opportunities that have changed over time. It's a little confusing when it says Bill 419 Amendments to Financial Measures Act, but that also brought in some changes to the Municipal Government Act, some that are more recent, some that are past. Essentially what we've been asked to do by Municipal Affairs is to change our approach in respect to public engagement on policy, but more importantly that we give notice to abutting municipalities. That's probably the biggest change here. Give notice to abutting municipalities if an application, a planning document, whether it's rezoning, policy change, or development agreements within 200 meters of the county boundary. So in our case, it would be potentially Colchester County, towns of Oxford, and the town of Amherst. For new planning documents, council has a public participation policy in place that's separate from the municipal planning strategy, but within that, we do now have policy that says when we do new planning documents that are policy related, we will have a public participation meeting. So it's a little different than a public hearing. But right now, our plans are to maintain what we have in respect to the only time we'll do an open house, similar to the public hearings we just had this afternoon on those two applications. We'll only have those open houses when we're doing a policy change, so a change to the municipal planning strategy. That kind of makes sense. If we're doing not every zoning straightforward, but if we're doing a rezoning or development agreement, they will follow the normal process with council, which is first reading for council's consideration, setting a public hearing, which is the chance for public to have engagement, and then moving to second reading and onwards. The reason we're looking at maintaining that part of the policy is that rezonings and development agreements are also not only subject to us having a public hearing to duly advertised, but they're also subject to the appeal process through the Municipal Government Act and the Utility Review Board. Next slide, ma'am, please. So I'm not going to read the policy. I know it's in your package. You've seen it through the first reading. But essentially, this is going to allow us to follow the public participation policy, but more specifically, we're going to be into the notice that we will give to adjacent municipalities. So just expanding kind of what we do now, essentially when it comes to public participation. So again, this is really just the second reading to kind of complete the process. Just to remind council, no financial barriers for this development. We're actually eliminating some of the requirements already through the change to the Municipal Government Act for paid advertisements. So now instead of having to have 2 notices, we're just doing 1. It will require us to give notices to those municipalities, but that will just be through correspondence, right? So we don't have to publish. This process went through first reading back in June. Again, we did our public advertisements of the hearing, which was held on July 24th. No comments were received through that process, and so we're here today for council to consider second reading, Your Worship. So recommendation and a motion is in the main package.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the municipal planning strategy 24-03 to add clause 6-24 on public participation. Someone make that motion, please. Moved by Councilor McCormick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. Questions or comments from Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, just one, I know we asked this way back, Mr. Boone, I think at the first reading, but it's just a question again. So we won't have to seek permission or any other involvement for a joining municipality, just notification is in the process, correct?
Correct, Your Worship.
Great.
And the CNO and I had that conversation through this process, so it's just a requirement for notification. We have got, it's almost like you're advising another landowner in the process, but in this case, it would be formal notice to the municipalities. They would know that we're starting this process, and they would be given written notice of it. We would provide them, some specific information on it, including the report that would be sent to council. So, but it's really just notice. No requirement. There's not a joint session of council. There's no requirement for them to endorse it. Now, if they would bring forward any concerns, obviously we would bring those to council in a first reading. But more importantly, we would note that in the public hearing information, and we would note it if things came even afterwards before we did second reading. But I don't anticipate any issues. In most cases, pretty well connected with the town on their issues and us with them. And the town of Amherst also provides planning support to Oxford, so we're kind of all interconnected. So I would think it would be a pretty straightforward process. I know the planning director in Colchester as well, so he and I have had some just very brief emails back and forth on this, because they're actually creating their new municipal planning strategy for county-wide, which we already have. They're in the process of doing that now, so so they would have the same requirement to give us notice of anything on the opposite side of the county line, giving us notice. So it'll be back and forth. So you will get some of these for sure.
Yeah, appreciate your clarification, because I think our concern when we originally heard this was, would this slow the process down? We're trying to do what we can to assist, property owners and developers, not slow it down. So that's great to hear that.
Yeah, just getting, Your Worship, just getting aligned with what municipal affairs want us to do, just to make sure municipalities are interconnected, especially when something could, impact the other municipality one way or the other. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So any other questions or comments from any councilors? Mr. Boone? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 5.3, second reading bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-04 and amend Schedule A to rezone PID 2518444 2019 Highway 307. Mr. Boone.
Again, thank you, Worship. This is second reading, as noted in the title, to create the bylaw to rezone. This is an example of one of our properties. Next slide, please. This is an example of a property that we have that's a smaller lot, agricultural zoning, and does not permit what the applicant and the owner of the property wants to do. So essentially, they want to convert this large single-unit dwelling into a duplex. So our agricultural zone, of course, allows for single-unit dwellings and accessory dwellings. It does not permit duplex dwellings. So something we will probably consider under the plan review, but in this case, we we've had several applications similar to this where we have to change the zoning from the agricultural zone to permit a little bit more development that would be appropriate. So the idea is to go from agricultural zone to country residential, which would allow the conversion of this building, this home into 2 units. What we have is a large extended family here, and they want to just more or less create individual units, a little bit more privacy, but they have it's a large family unit, but they just want to create that separation within the unit just for independence. And that's the kind of the genesis of this application. So again, this applicant, was represented through legal counsel with providing us the background, and so that was part of your original package report. Next slide, please. So this is not to spend too much time on it, but you just see agricultural zones in such small lots, not necessarily appropriate. So this is in keeping with policy to get it more appropriately zoned. And should they decide, as you can see, the building is offset to one side of the lot. In the future, if they decide to do anything else with this lot, with potentially subject to septic design, wanted to create more lots from this large residential, country residential type lot, this zoning will allow them to have that consideration. So dealing with the challenge they have today, but future planning by getting the zone in place for the whole parcel. We really shouldn't have 1 acre, 2 acre agricultural parcels. So this is one that is noted in our list of many for the plan review, is to reconsider all these agricultural zones that are on these small lots. This is just some schematic plans that they were doing to show how they wanted to divide it, so it's really just for information. Next slide, please. So just to quickly go through, no financial implications at this point. It's an existing septic system, so they'll work through the process whether any upgrades were needed, but you really already have the existing family unit living in the same space, so that will be dealt with and looked at as part of the permitting process. Community engagement, this has all been done under the Municipal Government Act, so without going through the whole list, we followed the process. We have been through the first reading, the public hearing, and we're now at the second reading where we are today. So recommendation before your worship, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-04 and Schedule A to rezone PID 25184-144 from agricultural zone to country residential zone. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Redmond, second by Councillor Gould. Any questions or comments for Mr. Gould in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 5.4, second reading bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-05, an amendment to Schedule A to rezone PID 255-102-72 and 253-316-12 496 Fox Point Road, Fox River. Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Worship. Again, at this stage in the process, we're at second reading. This is a bylaw that, again, is dealing with an agricultural zone and making changes to align more what exists today on these lands, but also what's proposed in the future. As presented at the public hearing and in your original first reading package, the owner-operator of this property, the Fox Point Inn, they have a desire to look at doing a planned development, which would be, we consider fixed roof overnight accommodations. So as you can see in that schematic, there would be 8 chalets proposed over timeline of development, could be phased in. As part of our conversations when this rezoning originally came forward, we asked to ensure that there was a buffer from adjacent property owners, which you can see on the original plan to the right of the chalets. You can see there's an open area that would be maintained for tree coverage and buffer. This is a little different than the last application. Although it's agricultural, we're looking to bring it to country commercial because fixed roof overnight accommodations wouldn't be permitted in a country residential zone. So we're trying to align this to be proper zoning for the existing inn, but allow for the future development. Some things that we did go through with the applicant, which would be part of the building permit stage later, your worship, would be some of the things in respect to design for septic and well and all of those good things. Next slide, please. So again, going from agricultural to the country commercial, and this just gives you a little snapshot of the area. So you can see that the 2 properties are currently agricultural zones, so we're going to rezone them. The resource designation allows the rezoning to go forward. You can see that the property is maintained as the inn now. operation, it's been there for a period of time. But in order to consider the development of the chalets, this rezoning would be necessary. Next slide, Wayne, please. So no specific final implications, no environmental implications specific to the rezoning, but as I mentioned just a moment ago, any design for septic and well would have to go through that process at the building permit stage. If there was consideration for what they call a cluster septic system, that would be designed what they call a QP2, which is a qualified professional, but would be an engineer level, so it would be elevated in that design criteria. As far as community engagement goes, we followed the process under the MGA, Section 204. First reading was done on June 26th. We had the public hearing that was duly advertised on the website and published in the Casket, the only regional paper that we have. Public hearing was held on July 24th. Now, Your Worship, we did have, staff did receive and had a conversation with the adjacent property owner, and we did mention that at the public hearing. They were not able to attend at the time. So I just wanted to mention that the concerns raised at the time were scale of development, so we looked at that. I think what we mentioned in the public hearing, that one of the things we require is that buffer between the adjacent property. And there was concerns over maintaining of the right-of-way. So the right-of-way to that back property is a registered right-of-way. We confirmed that on Property Online, so there is a registered right-of-way to the back property. So that can't be impeded. So that owner of the back lot has a deeded legal bounded right-of-way. So we did make sure that was the case, that there wouldn't be any impediment of that right-of-way. Same as any right-of-way on any property, you can't build on it. You can use it for access, but you cannot build on it. So there would be no structures or buildings, whether the chalets themselves or the or any kind of accessory building. So right-of-way has to be maintained as exactly that, it's a right-of-way. So that full width that's on that plan must be maintained. So, Your Worship, unless there's specific questions, we're ready to look at the recommendation.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-05 and Schedule A to rezone PID 255-10272 and PID 253-31612 from agriculture zone to country commercial zone. Someone like to make that motion, please? I think I saw Councillor Goodwin's hand. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Goodwin, seconded by Councillor McCormick. Any questions or comments for Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item? Councillor Hotelling.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question around the commercial development districts that we spoke about earlier. So would this, with the rezoning, be eligible because it's changing to a commercial zoning, or are all short-term rental properties eligible, or can you clarify?
We'd be specific in the bylaw, but if this was a commercial development that hadn't applied for a permit, so that is the key. So they're already in the process of permitting or had started construction, new or expanded would not qualify. But in this case, if the use is permitted and it's a commercial-based use, then it would qualify. But at this point, we don't have the bylaw in place, but that would be subject to an application that's part of the bylaw and following the criteria. So the key, I think I mentioned during the public hearing on the commercial tax districts, is that it has to be serviced. So you couldn't have, I'll say, off-grid that had no services to it, right, for example. So
Okay.
People are, it has to have services, which means well and septic. If that's a cluster system or shared well that's properly designed, that could be acceptable. But again, we're going to get a little more detail on that bylaw when the time comes.
Okay, so,
Hopefully, Your Worship, that answers the
Thank you.
question.
Councillor Hotelling?
so short-term rental properties will be eligible for commercial development district?
I would probably want some time just to detail a little
Sure.
more, Councillor, but I would say if they're expanding or building new, it could be possible.
Okay, thank you.
There may, if I might,
Yeah,
there may be an issue with respect to residential versus commercial there that we would
That's
have
my-
to sort out. And so the answer isn't necessarily yes, it's maybe.
Maybe, that's what I'm saying.
The other thing I just wanted to add and emphasize, Mr. Boone said, there's two bylaws that have to be in effect before we can actually begin to respond or enroll or approve applications. First is the changes to the MPS to designate the commercial development district, and that one's on the go. And then there's actually the commercial phase-in tax bylaw that actually has the guts or the mechanics of the the calculation and the refund. Both of those things have to be in place, and as Glenn correctly pointed out, applicants can't apply in arrears. It very, very clearly has to be in advance of a building permit being issued.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Okay, Councilor O'Telly?
Thank you,
There's
Your
your
Worship.
questions, great. Any other questions for Mr. Boone? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 5.5, second reading bylaw to amend land use bylaw 24-06, an amendment to Schedule A to rezoning PID 251-15965-8252 Highway 366 in Linden. Mr. Boone, sounds like your show today, Mr. Boone. You've been busy. No, you've been busy. No, that's great. Keep bringing it. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, again, second reading, another example of agricultural land designation or zoning on a property. This application came forward because the owner of the property has been looking at dividing this into two parcels to create two individual building lots subject to septic on-site design. Our indications from the surveyors supporting this application is that has aligned itself. They have not submitted that final plan that you see to the left, but the plan is to look to subdivide this subject to this rezoning, of course, because what the challenge here wasn't the use, because the lot is predominantly vacant with the exception of some storage and a RV that comes and goes. The agricultural zone, although it permits single unit dwellings, it has a larger lot size. So this would permit, subject, as I said, to the size being confirmed by septic design, would allow them to then take the new zone and divide it into two lots per the survey plan. So just gives you a little idea of that air photo. This is a heavy area for cottage development. There is some agricultural uses not far from this, but this particular property is small, and the lands even adjacent to it or to the rear of it are not utilized for agricultural purposes. A bit to the lower on the air photo, to the bottom, you see it is, but this area is highly developed as rural recreation, or in this case, we're looking to do country residential, because it's on the most of our rec zones are on the water side, so the appropriate zone here is country residential. So we're going to change it appropriately. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a flavor of the area. This isn't the part of Linden that's heavily agricultural. There's a lot of large farms out there, anyone that knows of the area. But this particular property is kind of estate-type lot with, still treed. It's got some flat areas where some of the trailers come and go. But as you can see in both directions, it's a country residential type area community. So I think it's in keeping with policy and the intent. No financial implications, Your Worship. Proposed future subdivision meets the requirement for subdivision pending approval from Department of Environment. As I mentioned, that process is underway. So I won't talk too much more about that. The community engagement process was followed as per the MGA. So once again, first reading, all the public hearings were duly advertised, and public hearing, no particular comments. This applicant, again, has been very patient in the process, and at this point, Your Worship, we had no comments or written or anybody show up at the public hearing, as you would recall. So I think at this point, we're really ready for the recommendation, and this is in alignment with policy.
Thank you, sir. The recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-06 and Schedule A to rezone PID 251-15965 from agricultural zone to country residential. Someone like to make that motion, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Gould. Any questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. 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 Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship.
5.6, ice-related activities protective helmet policy, 16-09 amendment. Ms. McCormick, Director of Recreation and Community Services. Pardon me? That's right.
Your Worship, it's tough to follow the Boone show.
It is. Yeah, it's quite busy.
Including your package, you'll find a memo containing proposed amendments to the ice-related activities protective helmet policy. Amendments include mandatory helmet use during municipally organized activities at the Parsboro Lions Arena. And it is the recommendation that council approve the amended ice-related activities protection policy 1609. I'm happy to hear any questions from council.
Thank you, Alice. The recommended motion is that council approve the amended ice allocation policy 20-06. Someone like to make that motion, please. Moved by Councillor O'Telling, second by Councillor Porter. Any questions or comments for Ally in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counter-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 5.7, ICE Allocation Policy 2006 Amendment. Ally, please.
Again, Your Worship, so included in your package, you'll also find a memo containing proposed amendments to the ICE allocation policy. Amendments include increasing our cancellation clause from 48 hours to 5 days notice, which as I shared during our committee of the whole meeting, this is in line with the policies of our neighboring municipalities. And so it is the recommendation that council approve the amended ICE allocation policy 20-06.
Thank you, Ally. So Ally's read the recommended motion. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councilor O'Telling, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. Any questions or comments for Ally in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counter-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, Ally. Business issues, number 6.1, Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Mr. Harrod, I believe, is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Worship. Peter McCracken, Deputy CAO, who normally would oversee issues like this and oversees this particular issue, is on vacation, so I'm going to pinch hit for him. This is not new to council. It was discussed at Committee of the Whole, and it is regarding the Equity and Diversion Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. The legislative authority comes from Bill 96, the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act. And there is a requirement for municipalities to have a committee and a plan, and this is Cumberland County's response to that. Terms of reference are fairly self-explanatory. I will try to answer any questions that council has if they come up. Worship.
Thank you. The recommended motion is that council approve the terms of reference for the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee. Somebody like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councilor Redmond, seconded by Councilor O'Telling. Questions or comments for Mr. Harrod? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counter-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 6.2, Parsville Dump Truck Contract Award. Mr. Walkrest, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. Contrary to the title, this is dump truck is to be used in the community of Spring Hill by the Spring Hill Public Works crew. We released a tender for the purchase of a single-axle dump truck to be used in Spring Hill. It replaces a 2011 Freightliner that's been in use for plowing, salting, winter road maintenance, and regular year-round operations to haul materials around between our various job sites. We received one bid for the tender. It was found to be compliant with the terms of the document, and delivery schedule is 52 weeks from the date of order. That would be, and as planned, that would be part of next year's capital budget. The bid came in over what our estimated price it would be for that truck by approximately $40,000. However, with one bid and it being compliant, staff are recommending council award that and fund it from next year's capital budget.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council award RFP MCC 2421 supply one highway plow/salt truck to Novus Truck Centers for a value of $390,551.97, including non-recoverable HST. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councilor McCormick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. Any questions or comments in regards to this agenda item for Mr. Walkrest? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counter-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. 6.3, Parsville UV Disinfection and Upgrade Tender Award. Mr. Walkrest.
Thank you, Your Worship. In constructing the new wells in the Parsville well field, it was found that the new well has a moderate risk of being goody, groundwater water under the direct influence of surface water. So in certain soil criteria or proximity to lakes or rivers, these wells can be more vulnerable to contamination from bacteria or other viruses. Nova Scotia Environment process says in these circumstances, with a moderate risk, UV secondary disinfection should be installed in addition to chlorination. And we determined a UV system at the Parsboro well field will address this. We've already purchased the UV equipment. However, the contract to install it came in over the remaining budget we have for this project. Two bids were received. They were evaluated by our engineering consultant, CBCL, and found to be compliant with the terms of the tender. And both companies are capable of doing the work.
The low bid was Moncton Plumbing and Supply Company Limited. We are recommending that they are hired to install this equipment and put it into service at the Parsboro well field to become compliant with requirements for second level disinfection.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council award T-MCC 2405 to Moncton Plumbing and Supply Company Limited for a value of $141,516.31, including non-recoverable HST. And further, the capital budget be increased for the Parsboro UV disinfection upgrade project by $62,000 to be funded by the water utility depreciation funds. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Goodwin, seconded by Councillor McCormick. Questions or comments for Mr. Walkrust in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. 6.4, municipally owned trucks and routes cost-shared program award approval. Mr. Walkrust.
So the province has created a program, municipally owned trucks and routes cost share program for where a provincial highway runs through a former town or community. We had applied to have parts of Main Street and Eastern Ave in Parsboro, which forms Highway 2, paved as part of this program. We had broken out in 2 scopes, not knowing if we'd be successful in this funding application. They've come back and said, yes, you are. So having spoken to Dexter, they have committed to honoring their tender pricing for Part B in Parsboro to do the remainder of Eastern and Main Street, as you can see in the map that was included in your package. Happy to answer any questions. We've done Part A, which would form our 50% already of the cost-sharing program, and this would be covered in the trucks and routes.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council award Part B of T-MCC-2401 to Dexter Construction Company Limited for a value of $345,236.40, including non-recoverable HST. If someone would like to make that motion, please. Moved by Councillor Goodwin, seconded by Councillor O'Telly. Any questions or comments for Mr. Walkrust in regards to this agenda item? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on the funding for that, where was the 345 coming from? Who wants to answer?
Mr. Harrit, you want to?
Go ahead. He was ready to.
Mr.
So,
Walkrust, please.
The original portion, the Part A that's already been completed, was approved in our capital budget and expended. The $345,000 will be paid through the Trunks and Routes program. So it's a 50% cost sharing. So you add Part A and Part B together, you get a total of 600 and change thousand. So we've already paid for our Part A.
Yeah.
So the Trunks and Routes program will pay for nearly the entirety of Part B.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Gould.
So 600, you said a total of 600?
Yep. So I can add to that, Your Worship, if I could. The total is just around $700,000. Council had approved about $450,000 worth of gas tax funds in the capital budget to pay for Parsboro paving, and this $333,000 will pick up the rest.
Great,
Right.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Just to add that we were, because of the way the tendering process works and the way the program worked, we weren't 100% sure that Providence offered the program, weren't sure it was going to be rolled out in time for our paving this year, but as it turned out, Providence approved the project, so it's a good thing for us.
Yep.
You know, it's 50 cent dollars from the Providence on the project, so it's great. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Walkrust? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. 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 Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I just asked for, before we do adjourn, I'd ask for a motion to go in camera for a few minutes, please. So someone will make that motion to go in camera, moved by Deputy Mayor Gilroy and seconded by Councillor Redmond. So we are in camera, folks.